Hi, welcome. I'm Hannah, this is Theology Therapist. So today I want to give you a little bit of background on myself. Since we've been talking so much about religious trauma and cults and therapy, how these all fit together, I want to give you a little bit of background to provide maybe some context to kind of provide a little bit of a picture of what this could look like. So here we go. I was raised in a denomination, so a type of Christian church called the Church of Christ, and it is not evangelical. It is decidedly not evangelical, but it is very fundamentalist and quite culty, depending on who's in leadership. Some, quite unfortunate, defining characteristics of this group are men are the ultimate authority. Women are not allowed to speak or to participate during the service, the worship service. Women are only allowed to teach other women, children, and unbaptized men. So baptism is a sort of like Christian ritual where you're kind of dunked under water and back up again. It's a symbol. And sometimes in certain Christian traditions that happens when you're a baby. In this one, it happens when you're an adult or sort of as a teenager, but whenever you choose, you have to be the one to choose that. And this stream says that women can teach men up to the point when they're baptized. There are no instruments. Secular things are bad, so think like dancing, music, etc. They are teetotalers, so 0 alcohol, or at least no admitting to anybody else that there is alcohol. And the belief that they are the one true church, and essentially everybody else is going to hell. Quick note. If you want a more comprehensive look at general cult characteristics, pause. Go watch episode 25, which is all about that, and then come back. Now, back to regularly scheduled programming. Actually, contrary to what you might be expecting, I actually really enjoyed my childhood. I really have fond memories of growing up in that group. It doesn't change, though, the significant impact or damage that this group had on my general development. So some of these things that development-wise that were impacted because of this group were, for example, learning about sex due to child sexual abuse in the community. So think skewed messaging about consent, attending true love waits and purity classes, think delayed sexual development, and poor or non-existent sexual education, sort of kept from or isolation from secular activities or groups. Think, and this one's gonna kill you guys, think not being allowed to read or watch Harry Potter when it came out. I was the age and when Harry Potter was first written and coming out, not allowed to watch it or not allowed to read it. So mission trips to proselytize and make new converts. Think colonization and transactional relationships. Having an old lady yell at me in a public setting as a young girl for wearing a strapless sundress. So think public shaming. And frequent teachings about how this group is the only group or the only right group, even out of other Christian groups, and is the only one that's going to heaven. Needing to constantly ask for forgiveness. Otherwise, if you die and you haven't asked for forgiveness for sins in between the sort of times of like last asked and death, you're out of luck and probably going to hell. So think constant anxiety and guilt about perfectionism and imposter syndrome. So when I say them, and when you hear them, we're probably both thinking these are outlandish and crazy things. But you know, I didn't actually even identify as having grown up in a cult until about a year ago. My mother came to visit me, and we were having a discussion of what it was like for her and my father to leave the church that I had grown up in. And she told me that they had asked themselves if we had been in a cult all this time. I can't even begin to describe to you the shock that I felt. And you might be like, Hannah, where were you all those years? But truly, and that's the thing with these like cults or culty groups, is that nobody joins a cult. That it's like the frog analogy. So if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, it's gonna jump right out. But if you put a frog in a pot of sort of cool water, warm water, and then you slowly turn up the heat, it doesn't actually notice. And so in that way it dies. So sorry for all of my like vegetarians, vegans out there. But that's sort of how it works. Same deal with the cult groups. And so I didn't even like, when my mom and I were talking about this, I was shocked. But my mom was right. It is really hard to leave a cult. For example, my way of journeying through this was that I went to college and I got a bachelor's degree in biblical text because I wanted to know the Bible and theology inside out so that I could destroy all of their arguments. And you know what? At the end, I could. But I was angry and it felt empty. And at some point, I got pretty tired of fighting and defending all of the things that I disagreed about. So I unequivocally left and I moved to New England. God, let me tell you what a breath of fresh air. The support that I received from my professors through college and grad school is what began my deconstruction of faith and the understanding for myself of who and what the divine is and is not. So I've talked about this before. I think that one of the most important things is that we not stop with deconstruction. We generally get that far, right? Like a lot of times people are raised religious, they're raised Catholic, they're raised Jewish, but by the time they reach adulthood or they become adults, they leave the sort of religious practices behind and they tend to say, well, I'm culturally Catholic or I'm culturally Jewish. So I think that the biggest thing is that it's important to not stop with deconstruction. Because if we stop with deconstruction, it can leave us feeling empty and even angry. What we need is, because we don't have those examples in our religious communities of people who talk about doubt, who talk about going through that process of deconstruction and then reconstructing. And so we need those people in our lives to show us the way. It's a really hard, arduous, but life-giving process to leave a community that has been and is oppressive and come through to being able to live your life based on what you want for you and knowing, being very confident as much as you can be in who and what you know the divine to be, who and what you know God to be. Or feeling very confident in your atheism, or feeling very confident in your agnosticism, right? That we haven't just like left it behind and we're now culturally Catholic, we're now culturally Jewish, but that we can say with some sort of degree of confidence, actually, it's not that I don't believe that, it's that this is what I believe. Are you or a loved one in a cult, or have you just left one? Have you not ever identified for yourself being in a culty environment? But after kind of hearing through and thinking through some of these things, you realize that this resonates with your experience. Do you need a safe space to process what happened, someone to walk alongside you in your journey forward? If so, I encourage you to reach out to a therapist in your area who specializes in religious trauma. If you're a Massachusetts resident, click the link in the description to schedule a free, no strings attached consultation to learn how therapy can help. It was great to see you today. Remember to subscribe to stay up to date on all new weekly content. Be well.